Hello. I hope that this worked, unlike everything else associated with today's live stream. I'm sorry about the many mistakes. Not my best work. Um, so today I want to thank you for the lovely greetings, by the way. I want to give you a little bit of a preview, kind of a private preview. This is mostly for me to practice of what's going on with our project with Partners in Health in the Kono district in Sierra Leone. I probably won't read most of your comments now, but I will come back and read them later. Well, yeah. So feel free to leave comments for me. And then I'll read a little bit. Why is the tip of my nose red? Is that a zit? Well, it doesn't matter. There's nothing I can do about it right now. So, where are we with fundraising? This has been a little bit difficult to pin down because we need to raise, basically, Partners in Health needs $20 million to break ground on the Maternal Center of Excellence. The scope of the project has changed a little bit in the last year, partly because, unfortunately, the pediatric ward of Kwedu Government Hospital burned down due to an electrical fire. So it is now a maternal center of excellence where there will be good quality maternal care, operating rooms, a fully functioning blood bank, also places for women with high-risk pregnancies to stay as they wait to deliver, which is a big issue. Like in the US or in Europe, you might be put on bed rest if you have a high-risk pregnancy. This is the equivalent of that in a lower resource environment. So the budget is still the same, thankfully, because they've found some savings and there's some efficiencies involved in once you're building stuff, it's easier to build stuff. So the number has not changed, which is good. The scope of the project has expanded a little bit to include a new pediatric ward, and also a NICU, which is a neonatal intensive care unit where really sick, if you're born prematurely or if you're born with a serious health condition, you can go and all the things that are not available now at Kwedu Government Hospital, which include like ventilators for babies, the incubators, and there's also lots of spaces for skin-to-skin contact, which is very effective, a very effective intervention. Like it's called kangaroo parenting. Yeah, so the plan looks really good. It's solid. They're ready to break ground in the spring, hopefully. COVID has not really slowed this down, thankfully. So they're ready to break ground in April. It'll take about 2 years to get everything up and running, partly because of the actual work of building all of this stuff associated with the expansion of the hospital, but partly because as part of the project, the Ministry of Health and PIH are going to be training a whole bunch of healthcare workers to work at this maternal center of excellence and to work in the pediatric ward and to work at the in the NICU. So some of that will be people who are already nurses or midwives or traditional birth attendants receiving additional training to help them in new roles or help them to expand their expertise. Some of it is training doctors for specifically for OBGYN stuff, and for being a pediatrician to really little babies, stuff like that. So that's where like the project is. And I'm going to make a video about this, I hope next week, unless I lose my temper and make a video about something else next week, because I'm pretty frustrated with the systemic response to COVID in the United States. right now, not just frustrated, but also upset. A friend of mine is very seriously ill. And her experiences really highlight, I think, some of what's so infuriating about the US response to this novel disease pandemic. The problem with making that video is that I don't know if I should go on this tangent, but like the problem with making that video is that it's not going to change anybody's mind. I don't think. I don't know how to move the needle in political discourse in America. Obviously, since between the time I started making videos and now, political discourse has gotten a lot worse. um, so to whatever extent, like Hank and I are trying to move the ocean one bucket at a time, and the rest of you are all trying to move the ocean one bucket full at a time to a different place of more meaningful dialogue. I feel like the tides move in and the tides move out, and our little individual buckets. Sometimes it feels like don't matter that much, but we still have to make the effort. We must hold. What is it? What is that Fitzgerald line? I must hold in concert the sense of the futility of effort and the sense of the necessity to struggle, or whatever. So anyway, I'm going to probably make a video about this next week. But about the MCOE. So there's two things. I guess there's two things to really remember here. One is this is a collaboration with the government of Sierra Leone. And that's really important because in the end, the government of Sierra Leone is going to be responsible for and running this hospital, as they have been for, since independence, with a, break during the Civil War, obviously. And the government is working really hard and devoting a lot of resources to this. So this is not like Nerdfighteria builds a hospital. That is the wrong way to think about this. Or even Partners in Health builds a hospital. That is also a wrong way to think about this. This is a lot of people come together to support Sierra Leonean healthcare workers and institutions as they build a hospital. So that's one thing that I am focused on. But we still need this $20 million. The Sierra Leonean healthcare system, to say that it's underfunded is a massive understatement. I think they have $47 per person per year to spend on healthcare. So it's obviously not a sufficient system. And so that's why we are trying to help with this capital project and with getting it off the ground. The way that it gets accounted is a little weird. This red spot is getting bigger. It's a good thing that I just made a video, because otherwise this would be a crisis. So anyway, I must hold in balance the sense that that's better. Of course, Fitzgerald is much better than I am. That's an understatement. So the way that this stuff gets accounted is a little weird because, like, let's say that I know many of you who are watching this are making like say a $5 or $10 donation every month to PIH through pih.org/HankandJohn. That gets accounted as if you are making the donation for like a certain number of months, right? Like it assumes that you will continue making the donation into the future for a certain number of months, but like how many months, like that's kind of guesswork, right? So like we don't totally know how many months that's going to work for. But I think the expectation is like something like 4 years, because like Hank and I have made a 5-year commitment. And so I think the expectation is that like most of y'all will join us on that journey for most of that time, provided that you are still able to donate. Obviously life circumstances can change, and it's now more than ever. So, but yeah, so the way that it gets accounted is that it assumes some of that money will keep coming in when it's thinking about like, how do we get to this magic $20 million number? So there's 10 that's coming in from either Hank and me or related projects. I don't think, like obviously DFTB, all of DFTBA, or 90% of DFTBA's, 94% of DFTBA's profits go to charity, and touring, a couple other things, small things, and then a lot of money has been raised by you, like millions of dollars. So I actually think that's another, between the matching fund and the monthly donations, given the way it's accounted, that counts as another like $5 million or even a little more, I think. Maybe like 5.5. I'd have to look it up to be sure. And then one person gave $500,000, which was very helpful. That happened last week. So that was wonderful news from a prominent person and supporter of our work, but it was really good news. I don't know that they want to be identified, at least yet. Then there's two other major donors. One anonymous Partners in Health donor who's just a fan of this project, donated $1 million, and one, I think that it's public knowledge now that the Roald Dahl Story Company, the company that basically owns Roald Dahl's books and movies and helps share them with the world, that they also donated $1 million. So where we are total is $18.5 million out of the 20 that we need to raise. To not have the fundraising be the factor that slows this. So my goal is to like not have money be the factor that slows the building and opening of this expansion of Koidu Government Hospital. Like I want it to go as fast as it can, given all the other challenges. I don't want money to be the challenge. So if they're looking to break ground in April, I think like for money not to be the problem, we would have to raise the money by February. So the Project for Awesome this year is going to be in February. It may come down to that. If we could raise the money before then and keep the P4A money kind of distributed among many charities, that would be great, because I know lots of, PIH is not the only organization in the world doing good work. And also like the Project for Awesome has always felt a little bit bigger than Nerdfighteria, although maybe less so recently. Yeah, so that's the basic update. We are, I'm not good at math, but I think we're like we're over 90% of the way there, but we still have a big funding gap, and we got to figure out how to fill it. Yeah, so that's the basic situation. I'm not seeing any chat, which makes me worry that I've disappeared, which would be bad. That would be a bummer. If the like internet went out or something. I'm gonna go to YouTube and see if you're chatting there. You're still here. Yeah, I just can't see you. I just can't see you on the live stream. Hey everybody. Everything is fine. Sometimes the chat just freezes. Yeah, so that's about where we are. We are yeah, so I think we're trying to think about like, it feels weird to go out to Nerdfighteria after everybody has been so generous and say like we need $1.5 million, but B, we do need $1.5 million. So that's basically where that is. And we're trying to think about what to do there. It's a few of you asked in comments about COVID. Sierra Leone has actually so far done a very good job with COVID response. So especially in Kono, where PIH is most active, there have been very few cases in the last couple months. We look, there's a lot we don't know about COVID, and I'm not an expert in any of this, but from what I've heard, there's some thought that there are obviously multiple factors going into why the response has been so good. I certainly think that having the experience of having lived through an extremely serious pandemic or epidemic in Ebola just a few years ago has has been a useful point of reference for people in West Africa. And we've heard from the beginning from people living in West Africa what we need to be doing, and we haven't really listened to that. One of my frustrations with the way that we talk about philanthropy in general, and especially the way we talk about like health-related philanthropy, is that we tend to imagine it as a one-way street instead of as an exchange of expertises. People who work in healthcare systems in really resource deprived communities have expertise that is really, really helpful and useful right now. They have public health expertise. They have expertise in how do you get information to people and get them to trust that information in a landscape where there's a lot of information that you can't trust. And how do you contact trace effectively and quickly? Those are questions that we should have been asking from the beginning. And if you look at where some of that expertise was applied or has been applied, like in Massachusetts's response, Massachusetts hired PIH to do contact tracing, and PIH has a ton of experience with that. They're also doing contact tracing in Sierra Leone. They're heading up the contact tracing program in Sierra Leone, and it's been very successful. And it's been successful in Massachusetts as well. The downside with the U.S. response, as opposed to the response in Sierra Leone, is that they're using the much faster but less accurate test that gives you results within like an hour, instead of the PCR testing that gives you results in like 2.5 days, but is more accurate. So it doesn't seem, at least right now, this could all change, right? Because like if we've seen anything from the pandemic, it's that like areas that seem to be doing well one month have, catastrophic outbreaks the next month. So nobody should be declaring victory or defeat. We are not near either of those eventualities when it comes to COVID. But right now, Sierra Leone is doing okay, and that has allowed the planning to continue without much interruption. So yeah, that's the deal. It continues to be really inspiring and moving to me that so many people have continued to donate, even as I think life has become more hyper local. And of course, so many people are out of work, and so many people are experiencing profound economic and other repercussions from the pandemic. So every time I see the fact that the monthly number still somehow goes up every month, even with all the things happening, it's very moving to me. Of course, that said, like if you personally are in a situation where you need that $10 a month, like we completely get it. So, all right, that's basically the update. Yeah. Okay. The COVID situation is really really bad here. Really, really bad. Yeah. Siga Jade has a question that is super relevant to me. I have been struck down with vertigo. Any suggestions for how to get through? Oh, it's so bad. If you have a good doctor, that's great. I really recommend going to an ear, nose, and throat doctor, like getting a recommendation from your general practitioner to go to an ear, nose, and throat doctor, because there's all kinds of like weird things that sometimes happen. The vestibular system, like the system that makes your sense of balance work, like the sense of balance is such a profound sense that we don't even notice that it's a sense until it's out of whack. But I really recommend that. I mean, in my case, I had labyrinthitis and like it just got better very slowly over the course of about a month, but I still have moments where I experience really intense vertigo, so far only moments. And my ear, nose, and throat doctor expects that at some point I will probably have another experience of labyrinthitis. And the other thing that is now different about my life is that my sense of balance is much more dependent upon my sight. So at night, or if my eyes are closed, it's really easy for me to fall over, lose my balance. That's all pretty common with people with labyrinthitis or vertigo problems. I mean, I I think Dramamine works for a lot of people. So if you haven't been prescribed meclizine, I would at least try it. It's Dramamine. It's over the counter. Um, I found it helpful when it was really bad. It made me sleepy, but also it didn't matter because I couldn't get out of bed. So, um, yeah, yeah. Um, okay. Maddie says a few of my friends are at college and several have gotten COVID and lied about who they've been in contact with so their friends wouldn't have to quarantine, resulting in a larger outbreak. Yeah, I mean, that's going to happen. The thing is, Maddie, and I hope you won't take this personally, like 19-year-olds don't always make the best decisions. You know, like I didn't make great decisions when I was 19 a lot of times. So it's a lot of pressure. I mean, obviously, your friends shouldn't do that. You should quarantine. It's not, you should quarantine. Just, but also, I think 19-year-olds are not the best decision makers. So, I mean, a lot of times you are, Maddie, not you. Other 19-year-olds. I know I was not a great. I know I did not. I mean, yeah, like if I'd been a sophomore in college and all of this was happening, like I don't trust that I would have made the best response, you know. Olivia points out that all 19-year-olds should vote, which is another way that I was making terrible choices when I was 19. I chose not to vote. But yeah, so what are you going to do? Speaking of what are you going to do, Wimbledon just lost. Jennifer goes to UAB, which is where my father-in-law worked for 45 years. And it's a great university. I've been to many college basketball games there with my cousin Braxton. And the COVID response at UAB has been very strong. That's the thing. Like it isn't universally bad. It hasn't been a universally bad thing because and this part of what I find so frustrating, like it's possible to get this under control. Like we see that it's possible to get it under control. Some colleges are have it under control. Some communities have it under control. The problem is if you have this very inconsistent public health messaging and this very inconsistent policy making nationally, you're just constantly gonna have these outbreaks. And then there may be some element of seasonality to it, which is just, pretty scary, but we don't know. We don't know. It's really hard and frustrating. And there's this huge failure collectively as Americans to understand the difference between personal risk and societal risk. So like you personally have a 1 in whatever, 1,000, maybe 5,000, depending on your age, maybe 1 in 10, depending on your age, chance of dying of COVID. Like even if you're, 75 years old, your chances of dying of COVID are only like, if you get it, are only like 1 in 10, maybe 1 in 14. We don't know for sure, but like somewhere in that category. So like your personal risk is low. Like the chances that like you or I will die of COVID is very low. But if 0.4% or 0.3% of all Americans die of COVID, that's tens of millions of people. And it is a catastrophe, the likes of which we have never seen. And it's I know that it's not tens of millions of people. It's 1 million people. But still, it would be, it's 1 million people. All of whom, yeah. And understanding that your personal risk can be low and the societal risk can still be really high, and that you have an obligation to the social order is hard, and it's harder when nobody is out there trying to explain it to you, when the leadership of the country is not particularly interested in y'all know. I don't think I'm gonna swap any votes today. Maybe I will. I mean, if anybody needs me to make a case that we need a change in leadership at the top of the United States, I'm happy to do that. I think we need that change. It's weird, strange days. So before having really done nothing but worried, which is probably not that helpful to any of you, I'm going to read a little bit and then answer a couple questions. And I mean, if I search my own hard drive, oh, there it is. Okay. And yes, I don't have this on I have it on the cloud. I have it like backed up on the cloud, but like functionally it's so long that it's just easier to keep it on my computer. What will I read today? I will read yeah. I mean, should I read one I might cut? Like, to see if it's as not good as I think it is? No. There's Halley's Comet. Scratch and sniff stickers. I fixed the scratch and sniff stickers one. Thank you for your comments on that last time. It was very helpful, and it allowed me to fix it. Teddy bears, whispering. The whispering is the one I might cut. It just doesn't work textually. Hawaiian pizza. Yeah. Piggly Wiggly. Yeah. I think I've read Piggly Wiggly. Diet Dr. Pepper. It's solid. It's not going anywhere. The Taco Bell breakfast menu. Yeah. Probably going to be there at the end. Why don't I try this Agnes Martin one? That's a new one. Let's see. And then there's Lascaux. I think that's going to stay. Sorry, I should have probably prepared a little more. I don't think that's going to change. The Civilization one is basically an expansion of a Pizzamas video that I just made. Sunsets isn't going anywhere. Tetris. I think I know what I'm doing with that. Monopoly. Let's go. You know what? Let's just go way down there to let's see if this isn't this the part where I'm like, oh yeah, so this is. I'm thinking. I mean, I still don't know how I'm going to structure this book exactly, but I have been thinking more about how do I respond to the obvious fact that midway through this project, we all suddenly discovered that we were living amid history, which had always been true, but suddenly became relevant. Yeah, I'll try this one about my friend Todd from About Academic Decathlon. I don't know. I don't know. This is one that the listeners to the podcast responded to a lot, but I always feel like it's still not quite there. All right. My best friend in high school, Todd, was also my roommate. I went to a boarding school in Alabama, and I remember once he told me that late at night when he was trying to go to bed, I turned into a stream of consciousness novel. I'd tell him everything, my every interaction with my English class crush, including selected quotations from the notes she and I exchanged, the reasons it just literally wasn't possible for me to turn in the paper I had due for history, the weird ache I always felt on the outside of my left knee, how nervous I'd been smoking a cigarette behind the gym because someone got caught there last week, and on and on and on until finally he would say, "Seriously, Green, I love you, but I have to sleep. We were not afraid to say I love you to each other. Here's my favorite story about Todd. In those days, they only offered the SAT every other month in Alabama. That should really be a colon, not a period. Here's my favorite story about Todd. Colon. In those days, they only offered the SAT every other month in Alabama, so we had to drive to Georgia to take it. We stayed up way too late at a Motel 6 watching movies on HBO the night before, and I was absolutely exhausted the day of the test. After struggling to concentrate for 4 endless hours, the test was over, and I met back up with Todd. The first thing he said to me was, "Hey, what's ostentatious mean?" And I told him that it meant like showy or over the top, and he nodded subtly to himself, and then after a second said, "Cool, I got them all then." And he had. Perfect score on the SAT. It was Todd who had the idea for me to join the academic decathlon team, although at first blush, I was a poor candidate. I never excelled academically and took some pride in not fulfilling my potential, in part because I was terrified that if I tried my hardest, the world would learn I didn't actually have that much potential. But amid my poor grades, Todd sensed an opportunity. Academic Decathlon, sometimes known as Acadec, features 10 disciplines. There are currently, yes? Are you recording? No, I'm doing a live show. There are currently 7 objective events featuring multiple choice tests: art history, economics, language and literature, math, music, science, and social science. And then there are 3 subjective events graded by judges: essay, an in-person interview, and the performance of a speech. No need to add that. Every school's academic team has 9 players. You get 3 A students with grade point averages above 3.75, 3 B students with grade point averages above 3, and 3 C students whose grade point averages are 2.99 or below. For all you non-Americans out there, that means 3 of each school's players get excellent marks, 3 get good ones, and 3 must be fairly bad at school. And as it happened, I was terrible at school. Todd believed that with his patient instruction and my awful grades, he could mold me into an academic decathlon superstar. And so, beginning in our junior year, we studied together. We read an entire economics textbook, and whenever I found part of it inscrutable, Todd would frame the topic in ways that were comprehensible to me. Learning about marginal utility, for instance, he explained it to me in terms of Zima. And then there's a footnote. Zima was a citrus-flavored alcoholic beverage that was sort of a precursor to contemporary hard seltzer. I'm a little embarrassed to tell you how bad my grades were in high school. I am deeply, profoundly ashamed to acknowledge how much my 16-year-old self loved Zima. That's why I'm putting it down here in the footnotes, which no one reads anyway. Todd would tell me, look, you drink 1 Zima and you feel good, you drink 2 Zima and you feel better, but maybe the benefit is smaller than between 0 and 1 Zimas. The additional usefulness of each added Zima gets lower and lower until eventually the curve inverts around 5 Zimas and you throw up. That's marginal utility. So we learned economics, but we also learned art history and chemistry and history and much else. Through studying for academic decathlon, I learned about everything from the Indus Valley civilization to mitosis. And thanks to Todd, I did become a very capable academic decathlete. Look, I don't want to brag, but at the Alabama State Academic Decathlon of 1994, I was the Michael Phelps of C students. I won 7 medals, 4 of them gold, out of a possible 10 events. I won a bronze medal in math, even though that year I received a D in pre-calc. Now, just to be clear, none of my scores would have gotten me into the top 10 A or B students, but I wasn't competing against them. For the first time in my academic life, I felt like I wasn't an idiot. I won gold medals in topics I thought I sucked at, like literature and history, and also one in speech, which was especially surprising because I'd always been a poor public speaker. I hated my voice, the way it betrayed my omnidirectional anxiety, and I'd always done terrible in debate competitions. But our school won that state competition, which meant we'd qualified for nationals. Let's fix that. New paragraph maybe fixes it. To be held that year in a hotel ballroom in Newark, New Jersey. Academic decathlon really did change this C student's life. That is a reference to something that I need to highlight earlier, which is that like the founder of Academic Decathlon was like, it needs to change C students' lives. But if you don't have that quote, doesn't really the bringing it back doesn't pay off. Academic Decathlon really did change this C student's life. My growing academic confidence combined with improved study skills learned from Todd meant that my grades started to improve, so much that I was briefly at risk of losing my coveted C student status until I realized I could just tank physics and keep my GPA below 3. That April, the 9 of us and our coaches flew up to Newark. We made friends with other nerds from around the country, including a C student from the Midwest whose name was, I think, Caroline. She had a good fake ID and managed to smuggle a 12-pack of Zimas to us. Todd was one of the leading A students at Nationals, and our little team from Alabama ended up finishing 6th in the nation, even though I only won a couple medals. One was in speech. My speech was about rivers. I don't remember much about it, but I think I talked about meanders, the serpentine bends in a river's course. I've loved rivers ever since I can remember. I spent one summer on a raft with my dad on the Noatak River in northern Alaska and another paddling the French Broad in Tennessee. I'm sure the speech was cringy, and I'm glad I don't have a copy of it so that I can remember it more fondly than it deserves to be remembered. And then a little, you need a little something there, like a but, like, but it was sincere or something. Well, that's a problem for future me. The idea for the speech was stolen from Todd. We were sitting on the banks of a creek one September afternoon, the air thick and mosquito laden, and Todd told me that what he liked about rivers was that they kept going. They meander this way and that, but they keep going. I'm writing this now on the west bank of the White River here in Indianapolis because these days I can only feel normal when I'm outside. I brought a lawn chair out to the river, and my laptop's battery has plenty of power. And before me, the river is a muddy, flooded cacophony. In a dry summer, I can walk across this stretch of river without ever getting my shorts wet, but now it's 15 feet deep and churning. Every minute or two, an uprooted tree comes barreling down the river. From here, the White River will flow into the Wabash, and then into the Ohio, and then into the Great Mississippi River, and then on into the Gulf of Mexico. And even after that, it will keep going, of course, freezing and melting and evaporating and raining and flowing and being neither created nor destroyed. Looking out at this river reminds me of sitting at the edge of that creek with Todd and how his love helped carry me through those years, and how in some ways it is still carrying me. I wonder if you have people like that in your life, people whose love still keeps you going, even though they are distant now because of time and geography and everything else that comes between us. I think maybe there's something about like upriver, like the idea that there's something like, if this is an inexact metaphor, but like some way of connecting it to the river of a life flowing through. I mean, this is the cheesy version, but like the river of a life, like flowing through places and people, and yeah, it's not quite there. This is the whole problem with the whole essay. It's close to something that I want to do very much. It's just not quite there. I came down to the river this afternoon because all day long my brain has refused to allow me to finish a thought, constantly interrupting with worries. Even my worries get interrupted by new worries or facets of old worries I had not adequately considered. My thoughts are a river overflowing its banks, churning and muddy and ceaseless. Because I've always had an unreliable mind, I look to others to tell me if my worries are reasonable. When I was young and terrified of flying, my mother told me to look into the eyes of the flight attendants whenever I felt overwhelmed with fear, and to remind myself that if they weren't worried, there wasn't anything to worry about. But it's July of 2020, and these days, everyone's eyes I look into are as scared as my own. And so I came down here to the water. Outside, the world continues apace. It's hot and muggy. A muskrat is clinging to the branch of a tree on the flooded river island before me. These days, I often feel as hopeless as I do helpless. But you can't see the future coming. Not the horrors for sure, but also not the wonders that are that see, that's too abrupt. I mean, yeah, it's close, I think, maybe, but that's too abrupt. You can't see the future coming, not the horrors for sure, but you also can't see the wonders that are coming, the moments of light-soaked joy that await each of us. How many times am I gonna reference light-soaked joy? A few, apparently. I'm gonna have to pick between this and, Jersey Dudek if I wanna do this bit. No, maybe I just delete that, and I just delete that. So these days, I often feel as hopeless as I do helpless. I glance back from my laptop screen. See, sometimes you think you have to add something, and what you actually have to do is delete something. These days, I often feel as hopeless as I do helpless. That can maybe go too. Now that I think about it, I glance back from my laptop screen to the river, then back to the screen, and then to the river. The muskrat relinquishes the tree branch and swims toward shore, disappearing around a bend before I can see its fate. And then, for no reason I know, a memory coalesces. After the academic decathlon competition in Newark was over, somehow we ended up with our Zimas on the roof of that hotel, Todd and me and a couple of our teammates. It was late at night, and New York glowed pink in the distance. I mean, should I acknowledge the fact that this girl, Caroline, whatever her name was there? Maybe I should acknowledge it. Maybe it doesn't matter. But like in the real story, that's a central part of the story because, like, you know, how do you say this? Like, some version of like Caroline was there too, and um, and I was falling in the kind of love that you can only fall into when you are 16 and will never again see this. Some version of like Caroline was there too, and I was falling in the kind of love that you can only fall into when you are 16 and will never again see the person in question, but better than that. It was late at night and New York City glowed pink in the distance. We were the sixth. Nope. See, because I really like that line. We were the sixth best academic decathlon team. And you know what? I'm sorry, Caroline, but I feel like this is really about a specific kind of love, which is just not yeah. After the academic decathlon competition in Newark was over, somehow we ended up with our Zimas on the roof of that hotel, Todd and me and a couple of our teammates, and Caroline, who's been cut out of the story. It was late at night, and New York City glowed pink in the distance. We were the sixth best academic decathlon team in the nation, and we were getting just the right amount of utility out of our Zima, and we loved each other. Rivers keep going, and we keep going, and there is no way back to the roof of that hotel. But the memory still holds me together. I give the academic decathlon 4.5 stars. I mean, I like what I like. There's things that I like about it. The things that I like about it, I really like because because it's hard to write about high school. Like it's hard for me to write about high school. It's the only time I've ever succeeded. I mean, people say that my novels are autobiographical or whatever, but they aren't. It's the only time I've ever succeeded in writing about my actual high school experience. Um, so yeah. Um, yeah. But I really like that idea that those memories, um, you know, can still are those memories are like like a warmth that survives. Um, yeah. Um, Yeah, and in the end, like, it's about my friendship with Todd. It's not about the single kiss that Caroline and I shared on the roof of that that hotel in Newark, New Jersey. um, so yeah, I think that yeah. So we'll see. We'll see where it ends up. I did really like academic decathlon. It was very helpful to me in my life. I mean, it was arguably the most like important academic thing that ever happened to me, other than like being taken serious. I mean, the other thing I guess was like, and I mean, it might be worth trying to write about this in the piece too, is that like it was also, I mean, I was also taken quite seriously by my coaches. Like they treated me as a person who was capable. And often in school, like I was a bad student and I also was like an unpleasant kid to teach. I think it's safe to say. So like often in school I was not like I yeah, so I think that may be something worth exploring. Like I'm trying to think if there's anything else tangentially, because like more than anything, it just feels a little thin to me. Like I think the reason I wanted to keep adding stuff was that it just feels a little thin. Um, it feels like it's like, and the other thing that I could maybe add is like some like a paragraph about the White River specifically, and because like the White River is extremely important to me, and I've thought a lot about it, and I've also like written a lot about it, but I kind of wrote about it in Turtles All the Way Down. But like, frankly, like the way Asa thinks of the White River is pretty distant from the way I think of the White River. So I think I can get away with writing about it again. But I'm always worried about repeating myself. Um, yeah. So many of you are asking. Um, yeah. So, uh, Rock is my air says, how much different will the book be from the podcast? Depends on the essay. I mean, there's like 6 to 8 new essays completely. Um, so those do not exist as a podcast and may never. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll record some of them. And then the rest of them, it really depends. Like some of them are pretty much like the exact same as the podcast. Like the Sycamore Trees one has only a few sentences changed, but then others are like, different. But no, I mean, I don't feel like a need to change them really. Like, I'm not trying to, I mean, to be honest, like, I'm not trying to like add value for book buyers really, because I feel like people who are going to get this book are mostly people who just want to have the essays in a different form. Or have them all together or not have them with that. I don't really know what the value proposition is for the people buying the book, but it also like I don't need it, like yeah. So some of them are very different and some of them are not very different is what I should have said. That's what I should have said. That's the answer. Um yeah, lots of people didn't know it. Um Lots of people didn't know what Zima was, but that's okay. I think I explained it well enough. It's sort of like Sprite. Um, yeah. So Elon says the academic decathlon review could go right before the review of You'll Never Walk Alone, which is actually the way that it is written in the book currently. So yeah. Yeah. So so that's good. I have to go soon, but I want to answer any questions. Um, Kimmy says, John, is there a way for you to send you the original Circle John poster I made before the shirt? Yes, absolutely. Just email me at sparkslayup@gmail.com and then we will, Nikki and I will figure out a way. That's very kind of you. Thank you. Don't feel like you have to, but we'll take it. Bridget says the parts about the White River sounded a lot like that one video you made called Let's Take a Walk. Yeah, I want to include a couple of observations from Let's Take a Walk. I mean, I think there's one that's already in there, but I maybe want to include a couple others. Most of the time, it feels like most of what I'm doing is like integrating things that I've written in Vlogbrothers videos and things that I've written in the Anthropocene Reviewed into one document. um, yeah. Zima is I had a Zima recently because they brought it back because anything that was successful when people who are now 45 were 18 always comes back, and it was all right. I mean, it was bad, but like it wasn't that bad. Um, I do think that I will write the broccoli tree as some kind of episode in the Anthropocene Reviewed. The only downside, the thing about the broccoli tree that it's just a little different. Like I tried to put it in the book in the first draft of the book, and it's just a little it's just a little parable-ish. And I didn't I struggled to make it what I wanted it to be. Um yeah, but I liked it as a video. I still like it as a video. It's also a great reminder of the my wonderful colleague Seth, who told me about the broccoli tree and who edited that video. Um, yeah, who's just a great guy who just moved to Canada. So, can you inspire me to start my college app essays? Oh God, that's so stressful. Oh God, my college application essays were so bad, and that was so is so hard. I don't know. Does that help you? Did I inspire you? um, it's hard. It's really hard. I don't know. Yeah, that's not easy. I don't envy you. It's a little bit of a difficult. I think the genre is unfair. Like Sarah wrote like this incredible college application essay about all the things that she'd done, but having like never gone to college. It was brilliant and funny and warm, and like she got into every college she applied to. Of course, she's also a very good student, and I I read her college application essay and I was like, this is great. And also, it's the only good one ever written. It's just so hard because it's basically somebody asking you, like, write about yourself in a way that's going to make us like you. Well, if I was good at getting strangers to like me, nobody is good at that. No, and particularly like nobody is good at that when they're a senior in high school. That's the hardest skill. And yeah, I mean, what do they want? Do they want to know that you can write a sentence? Like, do they? It's just so hard to know what they want, and you have to like. It's this weird act of empathy where you're trying to empathize with someone whose like job you cannot even begin to imagine. Like, how do you begin to imagine the job that is uh, deciding whether or not this person can go to this college when you're 17 or 18 years old? It's a lot. It's a lot. Um, so that's what I would say. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Everyone's college essays are bad. And if you can have some bright moments in yours, that's great. Oh, and don't plagiarize because that actually can really hurt your ability to get into college and is also wrong. Um, so, yeah. Yale's college application essay is apparently why Yale, which, um, yeah, that's good. I mean, the thing is, though, like, I don't know, like, what, like the college that I went to, which I loved and like had a great experience and feel very happy that I went there and very grateful. I had amazing teachers and learned a lot and I wouldn't, have the job that I have or the life that I have if I hadn't gone to college. Um, uh, but like when I was 17 and I was applying to go there, like if they'd asked me like why Kenyon, I would have been like, I don't know, because like I read 2 pages about it in the Fisk Guide to Colleges, and um I had like a budget for how much money I was allowed to spend on college applications, and like you squeaked in under the line. Is that a good answer? Like, yeah, because like you're in Ohio and like I live in the South and I kind of want to live in the North, but I don't want to live in a big city. Like that, that was basically the answer. Like, It seems like it's very rural and isolated there, and I'm used to going to small, radically insular schools where the outside world is like only occasionally a problem. Is that a good answer? I don't know. There are no good answers. Can we have this podcast episode where John and Hank discuss their college applications? I think Hank only applied to one college. It was a different era. Like I know now, I know it's very different now. And like also like both the colleges that Hank and I went to had acceptance rates over 50%. So now college, at least in some circles, has become like sort of a luxury good that prides itself on being unavailable to most people. And that wasn't, I mean, it was the case that college was unavailable to most people because of financial reasons, or at least not without taking on a huge amount of debt. But like, it was a little different in the early 90s. Oh, address Hank being punished, please. Why do I always, Sarah? I should not have responded to your comments because it was written in all capital letters, and the problem is that those are more easy to read, and so I end up reading them, even though it just encourages people to write in all capital letters, which of course, like we don't want as a total outcome for the world. That's not a dig at you in particular, Sarah, because you needed me. See, now you're in lowercase letters because you actually needed me to respond to this. It's not a dig in any way, but it does work. And Sarah says, I know I hate writing in all caps, but it was an emergency. And Diego writes in all caps, incentives are real. I can't help myself. I don't know. It's like I can't read a comment that isn't written in all caps. I haven't talked to Hank. I mean, I should bring it up with Hank. It's honestly like, I don't want to like claim like real life, but like real life has been pretty stressful this week. And so when I have talked to Hank this week, it's been not a vibe where I can be like, hey, so I think you have a punishment to do. But we do need to do it because it's a really critical like community building thing, and it's a long standing rule, and he did break it. So yeah, we will try to get Hank a punishment. I can seriously only read the caps lock comments. It's terrible. He uploaded like his 16-minute version of the Racks video. It's a great video, by the way. Like, it's great. It's just great. Yeah. It cannot, yeah, Hank's punishment. We will come up with a punishment idea that is not eating grass. I don't think he should eat grass. Maybe I will make him make a large donation to Partners in Health. That would hit him where it hurts. All right, I've got to go. But it's nice to be with all of you today, and it really cheered me up on a day when AFC Wimbledon lost a game that they shouldn't have lost. You made me forget all about that, and I am really happy to be here with you, and thank you for solving the clue. And I'm so sorry about how bad I screwed it up, and I will try not to do that next week. All right. Have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world, and I'll see hopefully a bunch of you next Tuesday. All right. Bye.